Alright, we just showed how to capture these springs and let them down into a spring clamp, as well as a pair of zip ties, and remove them and let them down, and then you have a clock that's safe to work with. So what I'm going to do now is take these same springs and capture one in a spring clamp, capture one in zip ties, and put them back in between the plates of the clock. So first off, let's change glasses and put my gloves on. Okay. Catch the end on there and get the pivot and the hub. And we're going to get that thing good and tight. Let's put the regular spring clamp on here, if I can figure out how to get this on. And let's let it down again. One thing about the Ollie Baker winder, if you want to focus down here, is that the switch for the ratchet is down here under the handle where it's hard to get to when you want to switch it up. So get in there and switch it, and start letting the power down into the mainspring clamp. Okay, that should do. And the next one. And this is going to be the one that I plan to capture with the zip ties. One thing to keep in mind with the zip ties when you're reinstalling is that you don't want to have it completely wound tight, or else you'll wind up having a little trouble installing the loop end of the mainspring on the movement post. And so it's good to remember about how many clicks, or maybe get a measurement of how far you tighten the zip tie when you pull it out of the, or when you let it down into the zip tie, and then tighten it down that much on the winder. That just helps simplify the process of getting it back in between the plates, and I can demonstrate that a little bit better once I'm actually ready to put it in the plates. So I'm going to tighten this zip tie down only by 3 or 4 clicks, and actually let a little tension off of it. There we go. And I'm going to get the second zip tie. And do that. So they're both, no, that one's showing a little tighter. There. Now they're both showing the same amount of notches, and they should equally hold the pressure from the spring. So now we should be ready to let this spring down into the zip ties. Okay. Once again, we have one spring captured in a spring clamp. We have the other spring captured in a pair of zip ties. And let's go ahead and install them in between the plates. All right, if I remember correctly, we can in there like so, and this one will go in. Now if you look, at first it looks like that's not going to reach over to the post, but actually the spring has some flex right there in the center, and so you can bring it over without any real force and get it on the post. So that's really not an issue. That's what I was talking about earlier when I was saying you need to watch how much you tighten the zip ties on the spring winder. Because if you tighten those, if you tighten the spring completely and then tighten zip ties around it, you might run into a situation where it's too tight to really get the end of the spring on the post yet. So, all right, let's move along here and get these installed. If I can properly remember where each of these go. There we go. Okay, so it looks like I managed to get, I don't know, something looks a little off. That for sure is supposed to be there. Let's see where else it's supposed to go. Oh, you know what? I have these backwards. That's what the deal is. Much better. Okay. Now, something I've discovered is you have to watch these pegs. These are the spring retainers inside the plate. You have to watch those pegs as you reinstall the plate and make sure that your springs remain inside of the bounds of those pegs, and it makes life a lot easier. Oops, pulling on the wrong thing there. And this is also where making sure that you don't over tighten these zip ties comes in and is really important. Like with this, I would not want to tighten that zip tie any further than it is right now. So what I'm going to do is put a pair of the nuts down here at the bottom to hold it in place. if I can use this spudger to push that in place. There we go. Now it's coming into play. If you look over here, this peg is trying to ride on top of the spring there. So you have to get that spring within bounds again. You get another nut on that center post. There we go. Okay. And now it's a game of fitting each pivot in the right hole. Go. I believe it's actually these top movement posts that are the hold up at the moment. Okay, accidentally caught one there. Right, that catches the time train. Let's get the strike train in there yet. Now realizing this is way oversimplifying things, not having to worry about the warning wheel and everything being in place. There we go. That satisfying feeling when everything popped in place. Okay. Everything's moving freely. And let me double check the pegs, the spring retainers, make sure everything is where it should be. Looks okay. And let's tighten it down. I'm not sure if these nuts are deformed or what it is. It seems like one set of flats will fit my wrench just fine, but then the next set won't. And maybe they're just handmade nuts, I don't know. I believe this clock was made in, let me see here, 1923, if that is actually the dating, which I suspect it is. So I would think those would be manufactured nuts. Okay, well, we will call that good for that. We'll capture the top wheels on in each train. Twisty tie. Do it without getting stuck. Okay, there we go. That will just hold things in place so I don't have to mess with the motion works and the levers and everything for this demonstration. Okay, so there we have both springs installed back in the movement, ready to be let down from their spring clamp and the whatchamacallit, zip ties. Now, Please excuse me as I managed to make this side work with a broken click spring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind it up using my finger as a click spring. You probably shouldn't try this at home. Never mind, I'm trying this at home, but so what I'm doing is I'm being careful to stop with the click embedded in a tooth, and it looks like I still have a little ways to go. What in the world? Okay, so it looks like I have a malfunction of my letdown tool. Let me see what happened there. Oh, it looks like the retaining nut on the back came loose. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can tighten this down again. Gotta love when the unexpected happens. Let me see here. This is where I should have an adjustable wrench handy. I don't, so I guess I will see if these are large enough. They're not. Well, let's improvise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, rather than use a pair of pliers on this nut, I'm going to clamp it in my vise, and I'm going to tighten that sucker down again. Okay, there we go. Hopefully that'll hold now. Pardon the interruption. So let's see here, these still need a little bit of work. The spring is nearly wound completely, and it won't be long before it finally gives enough to let the zip ties loose. I hope, because it sure is getting tight. This is not the recommended procedure considering I don't have a click spring. Okay, well that suddenly let loose of the zip ties, so they are completely loose now. I'm going to go ahead and call that a win, and I'm going to cut them off. So with a spring clamp, you can just slide it off without any fuss. With the zip ties, I prefer to just use the diagonal cutters and just cut them down here at the end. So that spring is now installed as it should be, and now I'm going to continue with this one. I'm going to tighten it or wind it up. Until I have some movement in the actual spring clamp here, and there we go, that let go. And I'm going to take the spring clamp right out of there. And there we have both springs uninstalled, let down, do whatever you need to with movement, capture the springs again in the spring winder, and reinstalled inside the plates. And that's all.